Hey, how's it going? Tim Crawford with Avoa here, and I'm just back from the TBM conference in San Diego, and thought I'd just take a few minutes and give a quick update and kind of my key takeaways coming from the conference and the number of conversations that I had while I was there. The vibe is really important at these conferences, especially for attendees and kind of where things go. And one of the key messages for the conference was about riding the wave and specifically riding the wave to value. And that's going to be a key message for Aptio and for TBM as they go forward. And so is the community. And I'll touch upon a few of those things. But here's kind of my key takeaways. So Aptio is the company kind of behind TBM and had started things for TBM, which is Technology Business Management for those of you that aren't familiar with TBM. It was acquired by IBM about a year ago. And so there were a lot of questions about how that was going to play out for Aptio as well as customers and for IBM. The bottom line is Aptio is doing a great job of kind of driving things forward. The innovation that they're bringing into the technology is really impressive, really key. And what was really interesting to see is how, on one hand, Ajay Patel, who's leading the charge for Aptio, and I had a chance to meet with him one-on-one a couple weeks ago in New York, and again this week in San Diego. He's doing a great job of leading the charge for the organization. And one of the things I thought was interesting is how Aptio is kind of keeping things separate from IBM to some degree, so it's not being absorbed into the IBM hive, if you will, which is good. But also, they're able to leverage new innovations coming out of IBM organizations like IBM Research. And so it was good to see kind of how that's kind of the best of both worlds for both IBM and IBM customers, but also for Aptio customers and prospects coming into it. The second thing that I saw was the integration of Cloudability and Turbonomic. Now, these are two products that Aptio has recently acquired. And historically, they were seen as kind of separate pillars and had separate interfaces and really didn't have a lot of kind of cross functionality. The team's done a great job of really kind of bringing those together. And on top of it, they're leveraging reusable tools like IBM's Carbon for the UX, which will just make it look like one seamless interface. And there's a lot more detail behind Cloudability and Turbonomic, but we'll save that for another conversation. The third thing, and this is a key important piece to the success of Aptio and TBM more broadly, is the TBM Council. The TBM Council currently has 18,000 members, represents 70 of the Fortune 500, had 34% growth in membership just in the last year. I mean, that's really impressive. They also have a new executive director, Matthew Garini, who I had a chance to sit down with one-on-one this week and kind of talk about his thoughts on the council, where the council's going, some of the new frameworks that they're working on, which is going to be really important as you start to think about technology business management and how that intersection between business and technology and finance and value comes into play. One of the things that he emphasized on stage, and then again when we were meeting one-on-one, is the importance of community. And I couldn't agree more. This is not a technology. TBM is not a technology that you just drop in and implement and away you go. It's really challenging technology to work with, but the companies that have really kind of made a commitment to TBM and its practices have seen just phenomenal outcomes. Granted, it's a lot of really big companies, and one of the things they're really trying to do is find ways to onboard smaller organizations, not necessarily SMB or mid-market, but smaller than the largest of companies into the mix. And when I say large companies, I'm talking about the likes of State Farm, the likes of BNY, Bank of New York. So how do you start to help these companies that don't necessarily have a team of financial folks within IT or within the organization that can focus on TBM? How do you help them kind of onboard and start to leverage this really powerful technology? The other thing is that the TBM Council is more than just about Aptio. So there's a symbiotic relationship between the two, but there's also an arm's length relationship between the two, which is really important. And to some degree, the TBM Council is more about focusing on the practice of TBM and supporting the ecosystem than it is about being a front end for Aptio. And what that means is you can likely see competitors coming into the mix for to help drive TBM as a practice, and that's going to be a really important thing. I think we'll start to see this more as you get more into complicated applications and more sophisticated applications moving forward within the enterprise. The last thing that I wanted to touch on, and this is another really key piece for the success of Aptio, but I think for the success of IT organizations moving forward is kind of the state of TBM, FinOps, Aptio, the TBM Council, and kind of where they're going from here. There was a lot of discussion on stage and a lot of customers sharing their success and how they've kind of navigated through using TBM and their FinOps journey. And so I think there is some confusion as to what TBM is versus FinOps, and so I think that'll get clarified. There's an awareness that needs to be addressed in terms of where FinOps is going versus TBM. Some of the expectation I think is that TBM will be somewhat of a superset to FinOps, but we'll see how that plays out. One of the great things that they were sharing at the conference was how customers are really using TBM to do a number of things, and the results were really, really impressive. Decreasing costs, improving customer satisfaction. Customer experience is a key important driver for enterprises and executive teams today. And so improving customer satisfaction is one of the top things that companies are trying to figure out how to improve. Increasing performance and increasing funding for innovation. And this kind of goes back to something that we're seeing more and more companies do, and especially in the AI space. And this is outside of Aptio and TBM, but getting funding for new experiments and new innovations has been pretty hard for enterprises to be able to do. And one of the things or one of the ways that they've been able to take money out of other parts of the budget and put it toward innovation is by driving efficiency. And so, where you can save money in one part of your budget, you can then apply it to innovative ways in other parts of the budget. And that's been a common kind of playbook item now for some time. And TBM is sitting right there to say, look, we can kind of rationalize some of the spending and understand where the spending is and provide value around understanding just what the value is for each of those different spend items, and then take that savings and be able to apply it toward innovation. And again, underscore value, 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 which is going to be really, really important. TBM takes work to see the returns. Some of the folks that I talked to and customers that I heard from, it's a commitment. It's a significant commitment. And I think this presents a bit of a hurdle for companies that are looking at TBM and going, whoa, this is a pretty large lift. But the good thing is Ajay and the Aptio team are really understanding that and really trying to find ways to streamline that process, knowing that getting from day one to day two and from product one to product two is a challenge and requires work. Now, the companies that have done that, they seem to have just wild success with it, but it's definitely a heavy lift for some organizations. And so I think clarifying that is going to be one of the top conversations as we kind of go forward in this. So TBM does take work, but the returns are there. The insights are incredibly powerful. So as we start to understand what we're spending money on and what's the return on that money that we're spending, especially as you see enterprises and products going from perpetual license to subscription to consumption and now token based pricing. It's going to be really challenging and complicated to be able to understand how each of these different aspects kind of feed into the overall value that we get for a given service or application. And that's really kind of at the core of what TBM brings to the table. One of the key messages, and we've heard this in other spaces, especially in AI, but with TBM, it also applies, and that is data governance. Data governance is key. And I think as you start to think about all of the different ways that the data is going to play a role as we start to understand everything from the different licensing models to sustainability, which was another topic of conversation here, you you really have to understand where this data is, how it's governed, and have really strong policies and frameworks in place to be able to manage the data and ensure that it's used in an appropriate way and that the data is good. I mean, there's a value that has to be placed on this data too. And then the last component that I'll share is, there's been a lot of work with TBM, but also within Aptio to figure out how do we make more seamless integration between the different pillars within the Aptio product suite. And there's a lot of work that the Aptio team is doing around that. It was really impressive to see. And I'm looking forward to kind of seeing what they bring to the market here in the coming months, and over the course of the next year. So I expect this to be a pretty hot topic, TBM, FinOps, especially for enterprise IT organizations moving forward. Aptio is kind of in a unique position, not a lot of competition. There are a number of products that do pieces of what Aptio does from a FinOps and TBM perspective, but it's a pretty complicated space, and so it'll be interesting to see where they go from here. So thanks for the time. Thanks for listening. Love to hear your comments. If you were at the conference, I'd love to hear your perspective, and let's take that conversation and keep it going. And thanks again for listening.